By day, Mong Kok swallows noise like a beast, arcades bleeping, neon bleeding, vendors calling through steam, but down a narrow lane where the signs thin and the rooftops lean. A shuttered cinema sleeps behind a rusted grill. The posters in its glass cases are sun-bleached to ghosts. Titles erased by time. After midnight the metal rattles once, like a breath taken in. Then the smell arrives first, hot dust. Vinegar from decomposing film stock. Something sweet and old as velvet curtains. If you're foolish enough to slip inside, you'll find the auditorium waiting as though the audience merely stepped out for cigarettes, seats sagging. Aisles sticky, the balcony bowed like a tired spine. No one touches the projector. Yet a bulb flares in the booth, and the beam cuts through drifting motes with surgical patience. On the screen, a film you've never heard of begins to roll. Black and white and too sharp. Showing streets that resemble Hong Kong but under a sky that isn't ours. The soundtrack crackles with a crowd you cannot see. Somewhere high above, a woman laughs, once. Joyless, and every door you swear you left ajar sighs shut. People say if you sit, the reel never ends. The scenes loop and deepen, splicing you in frame by frame, until the exit light gives up its little red ghost and the night edits you out. Her name was Angela Leung, a 25-year-old film student who never believed in curses but always believed in forgotten reels. She had grown up in Mong Kok, her childhood shaped by the glow of neighborhood cinemas that no longer existed. Where others saw derelict buildings and peeling posters, Angela saw history waiting to be documented. Her graduation project was simple in theory: trace the decline of Hong Kong's golden age of cinema. In practice, it meant chasing ghosts, both metaphorical and real. By day, Mong Kok was a tidal wave of shoppers and neon. But Angela knew how the side streets shifted at night. The alleys swallowed light, and the air carried a metallic tang, like film reels corroding in a locked vault. She had heard the story of the abandoned cinema since she was a girl, the Pearl Theater. Shuttered after a fire in the late 1980s. Its name still etched above the cracked facade. Official records blamed dwindling ticket sales, but residents whispered about something else. A midnight screening that emptied an auditorium without explanation. Angela had walked past the chained doors countless times, tracing her fingers over the rusted padlock, wondering if the legends were more than neighborhood folklore, when her professor demanded a story no one else has told. She knew where to look. Her plan was cautious: slip inside with her camera, document the ruins, capture a piece of forgotten history before redevelopment erased it. That Friday, when the crowds thinned and shutters clanged down, Angela packed her tripod, flashlight, and notebook. The street outside was noisy with minibus horns. But the moment she turned into the cinema's lane, the world muffled. The Pearl loomed like a jawbone of brick and iron. Its poster cases still clung to brittle scraps, faces blurred, titles faded into hieroglyphs of rot. As she stood there, adjusting her camera strap, Angela thought she heard something faint, the hiss of film threading through a projector. She smiled nervously. Of course, she told herself, it was only the wind curling through the grill. Yet a part of her wondered if she had already stepped into the first frame of a story she would not control. Angela slipped through the side entrance of the Pearl Theater, a door whose hinges had long since given up protesting. Dust swirled as her flashlight cut through the dark. Rows of seats stretched ahead like crooked teeth. Velvet faded to the color of dried blood. The air smelled of mildew, burnt fabric, and something sharper, like celluloid left too close to flame. She set up her tripod, scribbled notes. At first, everything felt like any other abandoned space she had documented, graffiti layered over decades. Beer cans rattling underfoot, the silence of a place that had forgotten voices. Yet as she moved toward the projection booth, she noticed details that didn't fit. A faint warmth radiated from the booth, though the rest of the building was damp and cold. The glass pane separating it from the auditorium was smeared with fingerprints, not fresh, not decades old, but something in between. Angela raised her camera and froze. Through the lens, she saw light flickering from inside. Not her flashlight, not reflection, real projection light. Weak but steady, as though a film had begun to roll. She lowered the camera. The booth was dark. She lifted the camera again. The beam reappeared, scattering motes in the air. Her pulse quickened. Old glass plays tricks, she whispered, forcing logic into her notes. Then came the sound. At first it was faint, like wind caught in ductwork. Slowly, it sharpened into the unmistakable stutter of a projector reel. A clicking rhythm. Angela swung her light toward the booth. Nothing, but the sound persisted, circling the auditorium like a metronome. On impulse, she sat in one of the front rows. The seat sagged, coughing dust, the moment her weight pressed down. The projector noise swelled, a glow flared on the screen. She gasped. Moving images flickered, black and white streets. Crowded trams, men in fedoras, women in cheongsams. It was Hong Kong, but not the Hong Kong she knew. The skyline was stunted, the harbor lined with masts instead of glass towers. She raised her camera to capture it. The viewfinder showed something worse, the audience. Dozens of shadowy figures filled the rows behind her. Silhouettes perfectly still, faces hidden. Angela spun around. The seats were empty, the dust undisturbed. Her chest tightened. Stress. Just stress, she muttered. She forced herself to look back at the screen. The film had shifted to an interior shot, a cinema almost identical to the Pearl. A woman sat in the front row, her outline eerily familiar. The woman lifted a camera, adjusted its strap. Angela's blood ran cold. She was watching herself. Angela's breath caught. On the screen, the black and white version of herself froze mid-gesture. Eyes fixed straight toward the camera. Her own camera trembled in her hands as though the reel on the wall was no longer projection but reflection. She turned sharply, expecting to find someone behind the booth manipulating the image. But the glass was dark, her flashlight beam bouncing back empty. When she looked again at the screen, the figure was gone. In its place, the seats of the Pearl appeared, filled with people dressed in fashions from half a century ago. They sat shoulder to shoulder, motionless, eyes locked forward. None blinked. Angela's skin prickled. She checked her phone for the time, 1:12 a.m., but the battery icon flickered and reset itself. For a moment, the lock screen displayed August 1987. She dropped it in shock, the device clattering onto sticky flooring that reeked faintly of burnt sugar. The projector's clicking accelerated, each rotation louder, heavier, until it was indistinguishable from a heartbeat. Then came the whispers. At first they drifted like radio static, then formed words in Cantonese she barely recognized. Sit. Watch. Don't leave. Angela stumbled toward the aisle, intending to leave, but the exit signs had gone dark. Only the faint glow of the screen remained, painting the theater in ghost light. Her footsteps slowed, dragged by something unseen. It felt as though the sticky floor itself was tugging her back toward the seats. She forced herself to glance behind. In the last row, a man had appeared. He was taller than the silhouettes before, dressed in a torn suit, his face obscured by the grain of projection light. He did not move, did not breathe, but his presence filled the theater like smoke. Angela ran for the side door, her hand slamming the push bar, locked solid. Her flashlight blinked out. The projector continued on, relentless. The screen now showed a close-up, a theater door, chained from the inside. Her door. Panic surged. She pounded the bar, shouting, but her voice seemed to echo unnaturally, like it had been dubbed in post-production. The auditorium swallowed it. Behind her, seats groaned as if bodies were rising from them. She spun back. For the first time, the figures moved, turning their heads toward her in perfect unison. Dozens of blurred faces, featureless yet intent, their whisper rose together, layered and suffocating. Stay with us. The film never ends. Angela clutched her camera to her chest, heart hammering. She realized then she wasn't documenting the cinema. She was becoming part of its reel. Angela staggered backward into the aisle, her beam of breath shallow, each inhale filling her with the sour tang of mildew and film dust. The whispers ebbed just long enough for the projector's whir to carve through the silence again. The screen shifted. Now it showed newspaper headlines, their text flickering as though pulled from archives. Pearl Theater fire. 37 feared dead. Midnight screening ends in tragedy. Angela blinked hard. She had searched university databases, and no such articles existed. Yet here they were, projected with brutal clarity. The image cut again, this time to grainy footage of people trapped in smoke, coughing, clawing at the aisles, pounding locked doors. She recognized the same seats she stood among now. The fire had consumed them right here, in this room, but the official record had erased it. A cover-up. The whispers sharpened into voices, rising like steam. We stayed. We watched. No one saved us. Angela's skin crawled as she realized the shadow audience weren't random specters. They were the remnants of that final screening. In the booth, light flared so bright she had to shield her eyes. Through her fingers she glimpsed another reel spinning. One not of celluloid but of memory itself. And threaded into it, impossibly, was a new figure. Her. Footage of Angela breaking in, setting up her tripod, sitting down, frozen in the first row. Her stomach dropped. The theater wasn't just replaying the past, it was splicing her into it. Frame by frame, it was rewriting her presence as part of the lost audience. If she stayed, she wouldn't just document the tragedy, she'd vanish into it. Angela whispered aloud, desperate, "Is that what you want? To be remembered? To have your story told?" The shadows rustled. The man in the torn suit at the back of the theater rose fully now. His figure sharper, his eyes glowing faintly in the projection's light. He raised a hand, pointing directly at her, and the voices surged. "Show them. Tell them. Do not let us burn unseen." The truth seared through her. These spirits were not feeding on her. They were demanding to be witnessed. Their erasure avenged. The Pearl Theater had not closed from disinterest. It had been sealed in silence. Its dead abandoned in the dark. Angela clutched her camera, the one object she trusted, and forced herself to hit record. The lens trembled, but it caught everything. The empty seats filling with silhouettes. The screen replaying a fire that had never been admitted. The phantom figures begging to be seen. "All right," she said, voice hoarse. "I'll show the world. I'll finish your film." The projector groaned, slowing, as if satisfied, but the reel did not stop. Not yet. The auditorium swelled with sound, an orchestra of voices, a chorus of screams, and the ceaseless rattle of the projector. Angela pressed her back against a row of seats. The camera still rolling, its red light blinking like a heartbeat. Shadows filled the aisles, their blurred forms rising from the dust, staggering toward her. They did not lunge, they drifted, their weightless bodies dragging the air colder with each step. On the screen, the fire replayed. Flames bloomed across the Pearl's velvet curtains, smoke billowing thick, trapping the audience. The reel looped mercilessly, showing the same moment of panic again and again. The shadows around her mirrored the images, coughing silently, clutching their throats, reliving their deaths in endless repetition. Angela tried to run, but every aisle narrowed into darkness. The exit signs had been consumed by the fire on the screen. The theater had no intention of letting her go. Then the man in the torn suit stepped into the aisle. Up close, his features were scorched, lips cracked and eyes blistered white. Yet his presence was steady, commanding. He raised his charred hand toward her camera. The whispers around her merged into one deafening demand. "Finish the film." Angela's pulse pounded. She lifted the camera, recording the man's ruined face. The audience of shadows, the looping inferno behind them. "I see you," she cried out, her voice trembling. "I see what happened to you. You won't be forgotten." For a moment, the noise collapsed into silence. The screen froze. Flames halted mid-curl. Every figure in the auditorium turned toward her, eyes hollow, but their movements paused, waiting. Then the projector clicked once more. The film changed. No longer the fire, it was Angela herself, standing in the middle of the theater, camera shaking in her hands. The reel showed her not as she was now, but as though she were already part of the archive, grainy, flickering, black and white. Her image looked back at her with wide, terrified eyes. The audience began to clap, soft, arrhythmic, like wet hands striking together. Their applause grew louder, echoing off the cracked plaster. They were welcoming her, inducting her into their eternal screening. Angela's knees buckled. She screamed, "I won't stay. I'll tell your story, but I won't stay." The man in the torn suit advanced, his burnt hand reaching. The heat from his body radiated like an open furnace. When his fingers brushed her arm, her skin blistered instantly. Her camera sparked, its battery draining to nothing, the recording freezing mid-frame. Desperate, she tore herself free and staggered toward the stage. The screen towered above her, images shifting faster and faster, faces of the dead, the fire, and her own, over and over, spliced into their tragedy. With one final surge of will, Angela hurled her camera straight at the screen. The impact shattered the projection. The screen rippled, tore like fabric, and a blast of smoke and ash exploded outward, engulfing the theater. The shadows shrieked in unison, their forms unraveling into wisps that spiraled upward and vanished. The man in the torn suit stood for one last moment, eyes locked on hers, not in rage, but in something like release. Then he dissolved, scattering into the haze. Angela collapsed onto the stage, coughing, eyes streaming from the smoke. The projector sputtered, coughed, and died. For the first time since she had entered, the theater was silent. When Angela woke, the theater was dark, silent, and still. The projector booth stood empty. The glass shattered inward. Her camera lay in pieces at the foot of the torn screen, its lens cracked like an open eye. She staggered to her feet, every breath raw from smoke, though the air smelled now only of dust and rust, not fire. The seats were empty, no shadows lingered, only the echo of her own movements filled the cavernous room. For a moment, she wondered if it had all been hallucination, the flickering reels, the audience of ghosts, the man in the charred suit. Yet when she touched her arm, a blistered burn marked the place where his hand had grazed her skin. Angela pushed her way to the emergency exit, and this time the bar gave. The alley outside was wet with rain. Mong Kok alive again with neon and noise. Vendors shouted, taxis blared their horns, the city oblivious to what had just transpired within the Pearl's rotting walls. She didn't tell anyone at first. How could she? Her project had no footage, no evidence, yet when she developed the film roll she had carried in her bag, one image appeared, burned into the negatives. A packed auditorium, every seat filled with blurred figures, all staring straight at her. Angela submitted her project as the film that never ends. Her professor praised its haunting tone, never asking where she had found the photographs. She let him believe they were staged, even as the burns on her arm took weeks to fade. But sometimes, when she walked through Mong Kok at night, she swore she could hear it again, the faint stutter of a projector reel, beating like a heart in the dark. Cinemas are supposed to preserve memory. They hold stories on reels of light, replaying them so no one forgets. But the Pearl Theater in Mong Kok carried a different legacy. Its reels did not fade when the building closed. They clung to tragedy, looping the screams of the forgotten until someone walked in to bear witness. Angela understood too late that ghosts are not always bound to graves. They linger in the places where stories were cut short. The fire that erased dozens of lives had also erased their names, their chance to be mourned. And so the cinema became their mausoleum, its screen a tombstone that flickered every midnight. Her burns would heal, her camera was lost, but the truth could not be buried again. She had seen their faces, heard their demand. All they wanted was what every story deserves, to be told. So if you ever pass a shuttered theater in Mong Kok, and you hear the faint stutter of a projector behind rusted doors, don't mistake it for the wind. Some films were never finished. Some reels still spin without an ending. And if you sit too long in the dark, the cinema may decide you belong in the cast. After all, every story needs an audience.